How to plan an educreation. If you plan out your educreation, you'll find that your work will be more organized and you're going to feel more confident while you're recording your educreation. When you're first starting to use Educreations, it's a really good idea to use a graphic organizer where you can plan out how many slides you'll need, what images you'll want to prepare, if any, what drawings or text you'll add to each slide, and what you'll record yourself saying. Here's an example. Let's say that I want to make an educreation showing the parts of an iPad. I'll need to introduce my lesson. I'm going to fill in the blank here. So you can see how in this graphic organizer it says the first slide is kind of the setup slide. That would be slide 1. I'm not going to add any images, but I am going to write the name of my educreation, which is the parts of an iPad. So I want that on my first slide, and then I'm going to fill in the blanks here. Today I'm going to show you the parts of an iPad. It's a good idea to tell your audience what they're about to hear you teach before you start teaching it. Now let's think about what I want on slide 2. So what kind of images am I going to want there? Well, since I'm talking about the parts of an iPad, I want an image that shows the front of an iPad. So I'm going to have to look for that. In this second slide, I want to label the parts of the iPad by adding arrows pointing to parts of the iPad. So now I got to think, which parts am I going to label and what am I going to write when I label them? Well, I'm going to want to show the home key. I'm also going to want to show the on-off switch. Now I want you to think, what else might you include on this slide? What other parts of the iPad might you point out if you were making this educreation? After I decide what I'm going to write on that slide as I'm teaching, then I'm going to script out my audio. If I script out my audio, I'm going to know exactly what to say when it's time for me to record, and I'll be less likely to make mistakes. So when I talk about the home key, I'm going to say something like, this is the home key. Press it once to close an app. Double-click to force quit an app. Notice how I'm trying to be really specific when I teach. I didn't just say, this is the home key. I actually added some important information about the home key. I would do the same for the on and off switch. I'd probably say, this is the on-off switch. You have to hold it down for 3 seconds before the iPad actually turns off. That's a key tip that I want people to know. Otherwise, you just end up making your iPad go to sleep. So make sure that you add key points like that when you're typing in your scripts. So what else would you add to talk about the other parts of the iPad that you had listed? What would you say about them? Now I'm going to keep going until I've added all the slides that I need to. So for slide 3, maybe I'll show the side of the iPad. And I might point to, so I might do arrows pointing to the, the volume control. What else might you show on the side of the iPad? And then I'll have to include the dialogue that I would say about the volume control and the other parts that I'm going to be talking about on slide 3. And then in slide 4, maybe I'll show the back of the iPad. And I'll have to think through what parts, arrows pointing to the parts of the iPad, what parts do I want to talk about on the back of the iPad? And then what exactly am I going to say when it comes to talk about those parts on the back of the iPad? So now it's time for me to start setting up my slides. I'm going to print this sheet out, or maybe I've written on a printout already. So as long as I have that sheet in front of me, I'm good to go. And then I'll open up the Educreations app, and I'm going to start setting up my slides. Anything that I listed as any text or images that I want on screen ahead of time, I'm going to place them here now. For example, for my opening slide, I want to put the title of what I'm teaching. Parts of an iPad. And let's see, I'll move that right in the middle of the screen. So now that slide is set up. Now for the next page, remember I needed an image of an iPad. So I'm going to search the web for an image of an iPad. And here's a good picture of the front of an iPad. So I'm going to put that here, make it a little bigger so that I can actually, and leave some space around it so I can actually label the parts. Now I'll go to the next page. I'm going to need the side of an iPad. So I'll look it up on the internet. Side of iPad. Oh, here's a good picture. So I'll add that. And now I also need the back of an iPad. So I'll search the web for that, for those copyright-free images. And here it is. Okay, so now it's time for the last step before recording. I'm going to practice reading all of my script before I start recording. Now remember, once you start recording, you cannot rewind. You can only pause. So if you've made a big mistake, you're going to have to start from scratch and redo everything. So practice, practice, practice so that you don't have that problem when you're in the middle of a recording. So I'm going to practice my script first, and then I'm ready to record. So the next time you make an Educreation, try using the planning sheet to map out everything you'll include in that Educreation. You'll notice that you'll do a much better job when you plan ahead.